Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the XFL DFS video for week number 7. So, kind of how I'm going to go through this video, we're going to do some recap of week number 6, kind of look through who played, like what percentage of snaps, pass attempts, percentage of carries for each team, percentage target shares, and everything else like that. Kind of talk through that, how it applied towards this week, and then kind of go through my sheet for the DFS for this week. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. If you're listening live, if you're watching on replay, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. But without further ado, we'll get started with kind of the recap of last week. So we start off with the Renegades as we typically do. Kyle Slaughter played 48% of the snaps. He had 45% of the pass attempts. He has been cut, so we don't really need to focus too much on him at this point in time. They traded for Luis Perez this week. He's not going to play this week, according to head coach Bob Stoops. So Drew Plitt should get the start. Kevin Anderson likely to be the backup. Plitt came in last week. He played 52% of the snaps. He had 55% of the pass attempts. He was all right. Like, this offense, just in general, play calling hasn't been great. This offense hasn't been too effective. It seems like they've kind of blamed the quarterbacks more than anything, when probably a lot of the blame should go on Jonathan Hayes, the offensive coordinator, but that's a whole different story for a different day. So as we move down, we saw an interesting development in the running back room here, with De'Veon Smith only getting 51% of the snaps. He had 40% of the carries with 10 total carries. Still active out of the backfield with 15% target share with 4 targets. But Letty Brown, who was recently signed to the team, I believe the week before, former West Virginia running back, he played 49% of the snaps. He had, I believe, 44% of the carries. So they essentially just split the workload straight down the middle last week. So when we look forward to this week, Letty Brown is a lot cheaper than De'Veon Smith. So the minimum price this week, he's going to be a guy that we're probably going to want in some of our lineups, even though this offense still kind of sucks. But, a decent point per dollar play. Again, it's going to draw a decent amount of ownership as well. And at wide receivers, they just rotate these guys like crazy still. So we had Tyler Vaughns, played 41% of snaps. He didn't receive a single target this week, played exclusively on the outside once again. Lawan Winningham, 48% of snaps, 11% target share. He had 3 targets. He did catch the 1 touchdown that the team scored. Primarily played on the outside with 27 snaps on the outside, 2 in the slot. Brandon Arconato, 41% of the snaps, a 19% target share with 5 total targets, played exclusively out of the slot. So he's kind of their lead slot guy. He's still getting the targets in that role, but none of these wide receivers are super valuable at this point in time. Victor Bolden, who recently signed with the team, played 16% of the snaps. He received 1 target for a 4% target share. Mainly operated out of the slot, 7 in the slot, 3 on the outside. Be interesting to see how he develops moving forward. Maybe he's a pay down option this week, but it's probably more likely to be next week, especially with the rotation they're really running here at wide receiver. And then Ronell Hall played 51% of snaps. He had a 7% target share with 2 targets. Played exclusively on the outside this week. The previous week, he played a little bit in the slot. He got a carry as well. So he was listed as a starter at the beginning of the year. So maybe they kind of work him up a little bit more. I don't exactly know what their plans are for him, but somebody to monitor moving forward. Maybe a pay down option this week as well. Caleb Van Den Esch played 30% of the snaps, 11% target share, 3 targets. Mainly played in the slot with 17 in the slot, 6 on the outside. Not been super interesting at this point in time. Then we have Javonta Payton as well, 43% of snaps, 7% target share with 2 targets. Primarily played on the outside with 22 on the outside, 4 in the slot. So just a big cluster at wide receiver here. Hopefully you're getting it right. If they even score a touchdown, which the way this offense is going, not too likely at this point in time. Then we have Sal Cannell, played 85% of the snaps. He had his lowest target share of the season at 19% with only 5 targets, but still their main factor is a receiving weapon, although this offense just, once again, isn't that great. For the other tight ends, he was pretty minimally once again. Sean Byer played 15% of snaps. He didn't receive a target once again. Nate Becker, 20% of snaps. He had 1 target for a 4% target share, so not too much we have to talk about there. In terms of the Renegades, we're not interested in too much this week. It's just kind of, if you really want to take a shot or a stand on somebody, you could do it, but it's just not an exciting offense at this point in time. And then we move down to the DC defenders. Jordan Tiamu played 96% of snaps. Deere King only played 8%, and he played like 1 as like a slot receiver, I think 2 in the backfield. So that was kind of interesting there. 97% of the pass attempts for Jordan Ta'amu. He had 31 pass attempts in this most recent game. He had 3% of the pass attempts for Derek King. He threw one total pass. King did not run the ball a single time this past game, 0 total carries. And Jordan Ta'amu had 3 total carries, but I believe they were just kneel downs. So these quarterbacks, these mobile quarterbacks in the super run heavy offense did not run the ball last week for whatever reason. Not exactly sure why, but that is something to monitor going forward. Seems like more of a 1 week fluke than anything else. At running back, they were still led by Abram Smith, played 69% of the snaps. He had 63% of the carries, 19 total carries, 1 touchdown, 3 targets out of the backfield for a 9% target share. He's still very, very involved. He's going to be probably a pretty popular option once again this week. And then Raquel Armstead behind him played 28% of the snaps, 27% of the carries. He had 8 total carries. He had 1 target out of the backfield for a 3% target share. Just kind of a punt play if you want to go there or throw a real dart at him, but not anything I'm super interested in this week. I was still limited in practice all week with his calf injury, but he is expected to play. When we get down to Raymond Calais, he was an active week 6. Chris Blair played 97% of the snaps, still very involved out there. He is 16% target share with 5 total targets. 60 of his snaps came on the outside. 11 actually came in the slot this week, which is a little bit of an uptick for him overall. Then we had Josh Hammond, 59% of snaps, which was his lowest snap rate of the season. Just not sure exactly why that is, but 25% target share. He's still very involved with 8 total targets, mainly playing out of the slot once again, 39 in the slot, 5 on the outside. Then we had Lucky Jackson with the big day, 86% of snaps, 25% target share with 8 total targets. He did score a touchdown, mainly on the outside, 50 on the outside, 13 in the slot. Then Jazz Ferguson was active for the first time this season, played 11% of snaps, and he had 1 target for a 3% target share. He played exclusively on the outside. We'll see if he gets worked in just a little bit more this week. Jaquiz 4% of snaps. He had 1 target for a 3% target share. He only played out of the slot once again. He is actually going to be out for this week with his injury. And then we have Brandon Smith, who was inactive in week 6. He's dealing with a little bit of a knee injury himself, but he's expected to play this week. And technically, he was listed as kind of the backup slot, so we'll see if that's the case this week or not. I do assume if Josh Hammond's not out there, Lucky Jackson would more likely play in the slot than like a Brandon Smith or a Jazz Ferguson, but we'll just have to see. For the tight ends, Ethan Wolf returned. He had played 59% of the snaps, 9% target share with 3 total targets. Pretty similar stats to what he's put up all season. And then we had Briley Moore, McKinney behind him, 54% of snaps, 3% target share with 1 total target. Trey Berry didn't play at all, didn't receive a single target, obviously. And then Alex Ellis played 27% of snaps. He had 1 target for a 3% target share. So nothing too crazy changing here for the DC Defenders. Getting down to the Houston Roughnecks, we had quite the development last week as Brandon Silvers played 53% of the snaps. Cole McDonald played 47%. I will note that, Cole McDonald obviously played better last week, but Brandon Silvers is still technically listed as the starter on the depth charts. So this could be a very interesting room for DFS purposes this week. If Brandon Silvers has another bad week, they're probably going to want to go to Cole McDonald or a little bit more often as they did do last week. But if Silvers goes out and plays well, could be an interesting leverage spot as well. 61% of the pass attempts for Brandon Silver, 17 total pass attempts. He did throw 1 interception, 0 touchdowns. 39% for Cole McDonald. He had 11 total passes. He had 1 long touchdown and 0 interceptions. 32% of the carries went to Cole McDonald. He had 6 total and 1 rushing touchdown. Brandon Silvers did not run the ball at all. So Cole McDonald, obviously the more effective player here. He'd be the more fantasy-friendly player with his rushing upside as well. But at this point in time, you have to assume that there's at least some type of split this week. Then we get down to the running back room. Max Borghi played 54. Excuse me. Max Borghi played 54% of snaps. He had 58% of carries. I think this is supposed to be 12 total carries. I'm not sure why I got 2 in there, but I had 2 rushing touchdowns. Only 2 targets out of the backfield for a 7% target share. Behind him, we had Bryce Aline at 23% of snaps. He had 1 carry for 5% carry share, no targets out of the backfield. Then Dewan Lee behind both of them, 5% of snaps, 1 carry for a 5% carry share, and 0 targets out of the backfield. So not really particularly targeting the running backs out of the backfield. That might be a Cole McDonald thing more than since he played a little bit more. Let's see how that looks this week going forward. We have Deontay Burnett. played 96% of the snaps, 21% target share, 6 targets. He did have 1 receiving touchdown as well. Play exclusively on the outside once again, so not too much that we have to talk about there. Jacory Robertson is a guy that should be pretty interesting moving forward. Could see some outside snaps, maybe a little bit in the slot as well. He's just a guy that he's the flat minimum. If he's worked in enough to this offense this week, he could be a flyer guy. But we'll just have to see how that all plays out. Justin Smith playing 100% of snaps, 18% target share with 5 total targets, and he played exclusively on the outside once again in place of Javonte Kirkland. Nick Conley only played 21% of the snaps. He received 0 targets. He played exclusively out of the slot and has since been cut this week. They signed Michael Bandy, who was kind of a preseason darling with the Chargers, played a little bit with them last year during the regular season, but he's a guy that has some familiarity with A.J. Smith, the offensive coordinator, as he played with him in the spring league in 2021. Whether or not he plays in week 7 is kind of another story. I kind of expect him to be inactive in week 7. We get Roberson active, and then next week in week 8, Bandy could work his way in a little bit more. Just have to see how that all plays out, though. We don't know for sure anything at this point in time, though. We get Cedric Byrd, who played 74% of snaps. He had a 29% target share with 8 total targets, played exclusively out of the slot once again. Travell Harris played 79% of snaps and 18% target share with 5 total targets, played exclusively out of the slot once again as well. Or I should note with these two guys, they got like 2 snaps on the outside this past week. I think Travell Harris had 2, and maybe Cedric Byrd had 1 or 2. So pretty much primarily on the outside exclusively, if you want to call it that. Ben Putnam, he had 28% of snaps, 7% target share with 2 total targets. Played exclusively on the slot. And then we had Devon Salter, who had 4% of snaps, 0% target share, and he just played a couple snaps on the outside. Then Garrett Owens, the tight end, played 14% of snaps. He had a 0% target share, so he's a non-factor once again. Honestly, we get down to the Guardians. Quentin Dormady played 100% of the snaps, but had 100% of the pass attempts. He had 23% of the carries with 5 total carries. Unfortunately, did not throw a touchdown in this game, but he wasn't bad by any means. He just wasn't very DFS relevant. Let's put it that way. So it's safe to assume that he will start once again this week. Pretty interesting price tag on him once again. Moving down the running back position, we had Jermaine Martin. 48% of the snaps, 45% of the carries, 10 total carries. He had 2 targets out of the backfield. Or there must be 1 target out of the backfield. I do apologize for that. 1 target out of the backfield for a 2% target share. And then Devin Narrington, the other running back, played 30% of the snaps. He had 32% of the carries, 7 total carries, but he did score 2 rushing touchdowns. So somebody to look out for there. 2% target share with 1 total target out of the backfield. And then we have Dedrick Thomas, kind of like the little snap back, filling back when they need him. 34% of the snaps, 12% target share. He had 5 targets in this game. He didn't receive a single carry, though. He had 9 snaps in the backfield, 15 out wide, and 1 in the slot this most recent week. So kind of their little gadget player still. Don't expect too much from him, not playing him for DFS purposes or anything else like that. Charleston Rambo had a decent week once again. He had 92% of snaps, 26% target share with 11 total targets. 52 snaps on the outside, 15 in the slot. So they've been moving around a little bit more, having a little bit more success with that. So that is something to monitor. Still probably going to be underway to the field on him, but that is kind of where I'm at with Charleston Rambo just personally. Tony Lattimore, 64% of the snaps, 17% target share with 7 targets. Still a decent amount of targets, but I believe that's his lowest target share of the season. Exclusively used in line and in the slot once again. Eli Rogers, 67% of snaps at 12% target share with 5 total targets, used exclusively out of the slot. Lance Lenoir played 0% of snaps. He had 0 targets in this game, which was kind of odd since he played almost every single snap the previous 2 weeks. So I believe he must have had like some type of pregame injury or something, because we really don't have any news on it before or even after. He's been placed on the reserve list now. So Dan Williams did take his place this most recent week, 95% of snaps. He had a 19% target share with 8 total targets, 62 snaps on the outside, 7 on the slot. So I do assume that he does that role once again this week and looks like a pretty good pay down option overall. Andrew Jamil played 18% of snaps. He had 1 target for a 2% target share. So still not very involved for him. Tight end, we had Logan Carter play 51% of snaps. He had 2 targets for a 5% target share. Ryan Becker was inactive in week 6, and Jalen Smith played 1 snap in week number 6. He had 1 target on that snap, though. So not super involved once again. Orlando kind of just looking like mainly what we've seen recently. If you want to play Dormady, you can. If you wanted to take a chance on either of the running backs, you could. I'd probably be mainly interested in Dan Williams and Cody Lattimore this week. If you really want to take a shot on Rambo, you can do it. If you really want to take a shot on Eli Rogers, you could probably do that as well. Then we get down to the San Antonio Brahmas, who had the interesting quarterback situation last week. Jawan Pass played 59% of the snaps. He had 70% of the pass attempts. He had 17% of the carries with 4 total carries as well. Kurt Beckert, who was recently signed about 2 days beforehand, played 41% of the snaps, 30% of the pass attempts, and 8% of the carries with 2 total carries. On the depth chart, Jack Cohen is still listed as the starter. Kurt Benkert listed as the backup. Jack Cohen was able to practice in full yesterday on Thursday, excuse me. Today is Friday. So we'll see if he's good to go this week or not. Still not very good. So there is a chance that him and Benkert both stay in this game and Pass is kind of inactive. But we'll just have to see how that news all plays out. And then we move over to the running back position. Jacques Patrick led the way. He had 83% of the snaps, 62.5% of the carries with 15 total carries, 4 targets out of the backfield for a 20% target share. Behind him, we had John Hillman, who had 39% of the snaps, 12.5% carry rate with 3 total carries, 5% target share with only 1 target out of the backfield. They did sign former University of Buffalo running back Kevin Marks Jr., who was notably there at the same time as Jared Patterson. They both were very effective for most of those years as well, playing alongside each other. Then their head coach left. I believe that was Lance Leipold, who went to Kansas. They lost 3 offensive linemen to the draft and didn't have the greatest senior year, but he's kind of bounced around a little bit. If he's active this week, maybe he's worth a dart throw, but I would assume that maybe he becomes the backup over Hillman, even though Hillman's been around for a little bit longer. So we'll just have to see how that situation all works out. We might be a little bit too early on that, but Marks would be somebody that I have a little bit interest in just in general moving forward. Maybe not this week, though. Brandon Akers played 80% of the snaps after his return, 25% target share. He had 5 targets. He played 22 snaps in the slot, 15 on the outside, though. So still going to be a major factor for them in the receiving game. TJ Vasher, 98% of the snaps, a 35% target share with 7 total targets. Mainly played on the outside, 36 snaps out there, 9 in the slot. Jalen Tolliver, who was their best wide receiver to start the year, apparently got in the doghouse and hasn't played too much since then. So 20% of the snaps, he received 0 targets, 1 on the outside, 8 in the slots. So not too interested in him at this point, unfortunately. Fred Brown played 96% of the snaps, a 10% target share with 2 total targets, 24 snaps in the slot, 19 on the outside. So he's a guy that's pretty involved. Travis Tovey is expected to be back this week, so we'll see who kind of gets kicked out of the rotation between him and Fred Brown. We'll just have to monitor that, honestly, because I don't really have a good read on that. But not too interested in these San Antonio pass catchers at this point in time. If I had to pick one, it's probably going to be TJ Vasher, honestly. Travis Johnson played 11% of snaps, didn't have a single target, 2 in the slot, 3 on the outside. Emmanuel Butler, 7% of snaps, didn't receive a single target, played exclusively on the outside. Toveen obviously was inactive in week 6, but is expected to be back for week 7. At tight end, Alize Mack played 59% of the snaps, did not receive a single target. Deion Yeller played 35% of the snaps and had a 5% target share with 1 lone target. So that is the Brahmas from last week in a nutshell. Probably the only 2 players that we're really looking at playing this week for them is going to be Jacques Patrick and TJ Vasher, honestly. Moving down to the Seattle Sea Dragons. Ben DiNucci played all the snaps. He had 100% of the pass attempts. Nothing new here. Morgan Nelson was inactive in week number 6. Darius Bradwell kind of led the way in the backfield, 48% of snaps, 60% carry rate with 12 total carries, 1 target out of the backfield for a 3% target share. TJ Hammonds played 15% of the snaps, 10% carry rate with 2 total carries, no targets out of the backfield. And you'll see between those 2 guys alone, only 63% of snaps when you add those 2 up. So weren't using the running back too often, honestly. which isn't a surprise in June Jones' offense, honestly, either. So, Decor Pearson, 88% of the snaps, 21% target share with 7 total targets, played exclusively out of the slot once again. Blake Jackson, 95% of snaps, 21% target share, 7 total targets. He did have a receiving touchdown as well, played exclusively out of the slot once again. Josh Gordon, still very ineffective at this point in time. Obviously, there's been like 2 weeks that he's been helpful, but more weeks than not too helpful at all. 53% of snaps, a 6% target share with 2 total targets, played exclusively on the outside once again. Juwan Green saw a big uptick in snaps, 73% of snaps, 24% target share, 8 total targets, 1 touchdown. 27 snaps in the slot, 17 on the outside, so was very involved and probably was the primary beneficiary of them not having a running back on the field, a little bit more often than in other games. Jordan VC, 70% of snaps, 21% target share, 7 total targets, played exclusively on the outside once again. Then we had Damian Willis, kind of the hero from the week before, 47% of snaps, 6% target share with 2 total targets, still playing exclusively on the outside. Kelvin McKnight had 5% of snaps, no targets, played exclusively out of the slot, pretty much just backing up Blake Jackson. Charlie Tumopo, 5% of snaps, didn't have a single target once again as well. So Seattle, not too much change in here. We'll have to see if Morgan Nelson plays or not, but obviously we know what we get with Danucci. We know what we kind of get with Ja'Cory Pearson and Blake Jackson. Picking the right outside to wide receiver right on any given week is kind of a struggle. And then Juwan Green still a kind of interesting play at this point in time, especially with his uptick. Moving down to the St. Louis Battlehawks. AJ McCarron, 100% of snaps, 100% of pass attempts once again. Brian Hill, 67% of snaps, 61% of carries, 14 total carries, 4 targets out of the backfield for a 14% target share. Mateo Durant barely played, 6% of snaps, 4% of carries with only 1 carry. He didn't have a single target out of the backfield, so that is something to monitor moving forward. Kareem Walker, 27% of snaps, 17% of carries. He did score like a garbage time touchdown. They were winning pretty easily in this game as well. No targets out of the backfield. Darius Shepard had the big week. He had 94% of snaps, 34% target share, 10 total targets. He did have 2 receiving touchdowns. Personally, I'm not a big Darius Shepard fan. I like putting him just in one lineup just in case it's the random week that he goes off, but you'll see he'll do like really good 1 week and then nothing for 4 weeks, and then he'll kind of have a good week, and then it's just kind of this big old cycle. So not too interested in him. Marcel Aitman is coming back this week, so he could potentially lose snaps as well. He played 42 on the outside, 17 in the slot. Hakeem Butler, 92% of snaps, 24% target share with 7 total targets. Probably his worst week so far on the season, but he played 28 on the outside, 28 in the slot. Austin Proehl, 73% of snaps, 10% target share with 3 total targets, played primarily out of the slot once again. Steven Mitchell saw a big downtick in snaps, 25% of snaps, only 1 target for a 3% target share. Play exclusively on the outside once again. Gary Jennings, 13% of snaps, 3% target share. He had 1 target, but he did catch that target for a touchdown. Used exclusively on the outside once again. George Campbell, 24% of snaps, but had a 10% target share with 3 targets. So a little bit involved when he was out there, used exclusively on the outside, but with Marcel Aitman coming back, don't really expect him to play much of a role either way. Tight end Jake Sutherland played 46% of snaps. They had 0 targets. And then Giovanni Haskins, 33% of snaps, did not receive a target either. Moving down to the Las Vegas Vipers. This was kind of an interesting one as well, just because they didn't really play well. Luis Perez got benched for Brett Hundley. Perez had 57% of snaps, 47% of the pass attempts. He had 1 carry for 8% of the carries as well. Luis Perez has since been traded to the Arlington Renegades this week and not expected to play for them either. So opening up this big door for Brett Hundley to be the starter, right? And that was not the case. Apparently, Jalen McClendon is going to get the start this week. So I expect him and Hundley to end up splitting this because McClendon is really not that good. He wasn't that great in college, wasn't that great in the XFL last time around. So do expect him to lose this job more likely than not once again. But maybe Hundley is just a little bit banged up with his thigh still, that he's not able to run around a little bit. They want somebody that's a little bit more mobile to come in. Maybe that's why they're playing McClendon. I really have no idea at this point in time. Brett Hundley played 43% of the snaps, 53% of the pass attempts. He did have 1 passing touchdown as well. For their running backs, Rod Smith played 32% of the snaps, 38% of the carries with 5 total carries. He had 2 targets out of the backfield for a 5% target share. And then we had John Lovett, 38% of the snaps, 46% of the carries, 6 total carries, 18% target share. He had 7 total targets in this game, so very involved there. He did have the 1 receiving touchdown as well. So this would be a guy that we want to look out for a little bit this week, especially with some of the news for the wide receiver room for this Vipers team of them potentially not playing. DeAndre Torre, the other running back, 11% of snaps, no carries, but he did have 2 targets out of the backfield. He has since been put on the reserve list this week, so he will not be playing in week number 7. Not sure what his injury was once again. Brian Burt inactive in week 6. Expect him to play in week 7, though, as kind of that third running back, maybe even emergency wide receiver this week, if we're being completely honest. Jeff Badet played 95% of the snaps, 18% target share, 7 total targets. 46 of his snaps came on the slot, 11 on the outside. Martavis Bryant played 75% of the snaps, 13% target share. He had 5 total targets. 34 of his snaps came on the outside, 11 in the slot. Geronimo Allison, 92% of snaps, a 16% target share, 6 total targets, 43 on the outside, 12 in the slot. So they were kind of moving the ball around a little bit more in terms of targeting different people. Sneak Sweeting, 40% of snaps and 8% target share with 3 total targets. 13 of his snaps on the outside and 9 in the slot. And then we had Matthew Sexton, 22% of snaps, did not receive a single target. Played a little bit in the slot and a little bit on the outside, 7 in the slot, 6 on the outside. And then all these guys were just kind of around once again. Brandon Dillon, 37% of snaps, no targets. Cam Sutton, 32% of snaps. He had 3 targets for an 8% target share. So he's really the guy they're trying to throw to when they are throwing the ball to the tight end position. Sean Price, 18% of snaps, a 5% target share with 2 targets. And then Travis Kuntz, who is 8% of snaps, a 3% target share with 1 total target. So not too much to say here about the Vipers. We do have news that Geronimo Allison is questionable. He's been limited all week with a back injury. Sneak Sweeting, questionable. He's been limited all week with an ankle injury. And Martavis Bryant did not practice yesterday due to an illness. So there could be potential openings in this wide receiver room, especially if 2 or 3 of those guys don't end up playing. And they're a team that really doesn't have the depth, if we're being completely honest, at the wide receiver position, because the only guys that are really healthy at this point in time, Jeff Badet and Matthew Sexton. They did sign Saeed Blacknall, who played with LA team last time around, formerly of Penn State, just kind of big body guy, nothing really too special there, never been really too productive. So he might get some run this week if everybody else is kind of out, but he's not on DraftKings either way. But just going through that recap of last week, kind of breaking things down. Hopefully that gave you guys a little bit of insight. I'm going to also just put up here on the banner too the promo code coach over at runthesims.com for saving 10% off there. If you enjoy some of these target shares, carry percentages, trying to break up which quarterbacks are going to play what, it's a great tool over there using their DIY where you put in all those percentages yourself. And then you can take that, save your projections, go to the Classic Optimizer and build your lineups out from there as well. So definitely a great tool. If you use code coach over at runthesims.com, you'll save 10% as well. So I do have a comment up here just saying thank you, bro. Do appreciate everybody that is tuning in to check this out. Since we kind of done the recap at this point in time for last week, we're going to go over to my sheet for this week and just kind of talk through some of the plays overall. So let me stop sharing this screen. We'll get that sheet brought up and then just talk a little bit about kind of these plays, where I would play them. So at the quarterback position for the Arlington Renegades, once again, Kyle Slaughter was cut this week. Obviously, we're not playing him. We have Drew Plitt likely to start at $7,500. If you really want to throw him out on a GPP, you could do it. Luis Perez was traded to the team this week. He is not expected to play. Kevin Anderson is expected to be a backup. I don't know how long a leash that Drew Plitt will have, but he does have a little bit of upside. At running back, we have Davion Smith. He's just a GPP play at this point in time. You're hoping he falls into the end zone for a touchdown. Him and Letty Brown really split last week. So Letty Brown, the GPP pay down option, maybe even a cash filler option if you need to do so. A wide receiver, really not interested in anybody from this Arlington team at this point. If I had to go to somebody, it'd probably be Ronnell Hall as a GPP pay down. If you really want to take a stab, Victor Bolden, you could do it. But I'm not there playing myself. Sal Cannella at tight end, you could still throw out in GPPs. He's like the cheapest price he's been all season at $7,000. He might have been less than that week 1, but that's about it. If you want to play the Renegades defense, as just kind of a GPP option against Seattle. You can do it. Seattle can put up points, but Ben DiNucci is a little turnover prone at the same time. So the good defense against a turnover prone quarterback could end up paying off as well. When we move down to the DC defenders, we're looking at Jordan Ta'amu, $8,500, probably one of the better values at quarterback this week. He is a cash game play, especially if he's going to play as many snaps as he has played the last 2 weeks. And Derek King's not super involved as he's been. If they're throwing the ball a little bit more, he does have a little bit of upside as well. Hopefully he runs the ball a little bit more this week, though. So I'm going to be like at least in line, or and we'll talk about that once we get over to DraftKings just a little bit as well. So let me just continue with this. Abram Smith, $9,600. It's a big price tag. So typically when I see that big price tag, I'm putting GPP. But if you want to roll him out in cash, you can definitely do that this week. Getting out of the wide receivers, if you want to take a stab at Chris Blair or Lucky Jackson at their price tags, I don't really have any problem with that. If you have any other guys that you want to make a dart throw on this team, maybe you can do that. The DC defenders defense going to be a cash game play of $5,000 going against Orlando. Should be a pretty good matchup for them overall. When we get down to the Houston Roughnecks, if you really want to play a Cole McDonald or Brandon Silvers this week in a GPP and kind of make a contrarian stance with that, definitely feel free to do so. Both guys have a ton of upside. It just kind of depends who ends up going out there and playing the most. Max Borghi at GPP option for me personally. I really like him this week. I'll probably be over the field on him. I'll be completely honest there. One of the cheaper price tags we've seen on him in a while. He still has a decent amount of the carries in his backfield, a decent amount of snaps involved in the passing game. Everybody else is kind of flocking to all these other running backs, so could come in a little bit under-owned compared to other weeks. The other running backs we're not really super interested in. Obviously, Nick Holley, I already mentioned, was cut this week. If you want to take a stab on any of these wide receivers for the Roughnecks, definitely does make some sense, whether it's a Deontay Burnett, a Cedric Byrd, a Travell Harris, a Justin Smith. If you want to dart throw on Jacory Roberson, you could do that as well. Don't expect Michael Manny to play this week, even though he was signed this week. When you're talking about Garrett Owens, some of these other guys, not really too interested there. Roughnecks defense is coming in pretty popular this week, according to Run the Sims for projected ownership. They are the second highest projected defense. I don't really see it personally. I'd rather go to some other defenses if I'm being completely honest, but they are a GPP option. It's a little bit tougher matchup going against St. Louis though. For the Guardians, if you want to play Quentin Dormady and GPPs, you could do it at $8,000. Does offer some upside there. There is always the possibility that he gets benched, but probably not too worried about that at this point in time. They do have Paxton Lynch listed as the backup, so we'll see if he's actually the active backup this week or not. Like I said, with the running backs, if you want to take a stab on either one of these, you can. It seems like every other week is the week that the one scores the touchdown and you're playing the wrong guy, probably. Dan Williams, GPP paydown option at $3,000 for me. If you want to throw him in as cash, like as a cheap filler guy, you can definitely do that as well. And then we have Cody Lattimore, $8,000. Still consider him a GPP. If you wanted to play him in cash, you probably could as well. Charleston Rambo, Eli Rogers, if you want to take shots on those guys, you can. Lance Lenore was placed on the reserve list this week. They did sign KD Cannon as another wide receiver, but don't expect him to be active this week. Not interested in the tight ends. And they did sign Jordan Thomas to play some tight end this week as well. So they're going after those bigger athletic tight ends, but they don't use them enough to really be worth much. Then we get down to the Brahmas. Like I said, sounds like Jack Cohen's going to start since he practiced some full yesterday. Benkert likely to be behind him according to the depth chart. Not really interested in either guy at this point in time. If we get news that like Benkert's going to start, then maybe he becomes a little bit more interested in at the flat minimum of $6,000 for quarterbacks. Jaquez Patrick at the running back position, cash game play. If you want to play Kevin Marks and John Hillman as kind of like a dart throw pay down option, you can do it. I like Marks would be my preferred option. Not sure it's going to be this week for him, but in the future, guy to look out for at the very least. Calvin Turner, the hybrid running back wide receiver guy. They brought him off the reserve list last week, and he's out last week, and he's out this week with the foot injury too. So not too worried about him. Fred Brown, if you want to play him as a GPP pay down option, you could do it. There's some risk there with Tovin coming back this week. TJ Vasher would be my main concern here as a pay down option. If you really wanted to pay up for Landon Akers, you could do it, but $8,400 is just too much for a guy that's not giving you much upside, honestly. Like you have to hope that he's going to catch like 10 passes. which I don't really see that happening. If he's like closer to like $6,000, we probably consider it, but at this point in time, not really worth it. And if you're on the opposite end of the Fred Brown spectrum and you really think Tovine's going to be the guy, you could use him as a pay down option if you really, really wanted to. Brahma's defense, they're a GPP option for me. I think you could probably play them in cash going against Jalen McClendon for Vegas too, especially if all these wide receivers are banged up for Vegas. Don't mind the Brahma's defense there. They played pretty well so far this season as well. Going down to Seattle Sea Dragons, we got Ben DiNucci, who is obviously the GPP option once again. Harder to play him in cash just with the price tag that he's at. Running backs, if Bradwell is the guy and Ellison doesn't play, you could probably roam on GPPs. If Ellison plays, then maybe you can throw Ellison out on GPPs because that probably means that they think he's at least healthy enough to play this week. Don't really have a good read on that one at this point in time, though. Wide receivers, I look at Jawan Green as kind of a GPP paydown option. You probably use him as a cash filler if you really wanted to do so as well. Blake Jackson, Ja'Cory Pearson, GPP. You could probably play Blake Jackson in cash too as well if you want to. Jordan VC, I'm looking at as a GPP paydown. If you think Damian Willis is going to get a little bit more run this week as well, you could probably use him as a paydown option too. Then the Seattle defense, they are very banged up this week, but they're going against Arlington, which has been one of the worst offensive teams in the league. So I think you can use them as a GPP option. You can use them a cash game option if you want to. I'd probably be between them and the Brahmas defense for cash personally. But obviously the defenders are going to be up there as well. For the Battlehawks, AJ McCarron, GPP option. He's probably one of the safer quarterbacks just because with all the quarterback I don't even know what you would call it, diversity parity at this point. It's really him, like Ben DiNucci and Jordan Tam, they really have like kind of safe jobs. So going with one of those three does make some sense. He is the mid-price guy out of those three, obviously. Probably more people going to Jordan Tam just because he's a little bit cheaper. So if you kind of want to get that middle ground, make a stance there, you can definitely do that as well. Brian Hill, he's at the $9,400 point where it's like you can play him in cash. I probably that's a tough one just because like you get to this point where you're at Abram Smith or Brian Hill and you have to make a choice there. And most likely people are going to play Abram Smith. So you're probably better off playing Abram Smith in cash and Brian Hill in GPPs. Just my personal opinion though. Then we get to the wide receiver unit. I think Hakeem Butler, you could still play in GPPs. Austin Perel, Darius Shepard, you could do as well. Marcel Aitman. Last time I checked, he was still not on DraftKings, even though he is expected to play this week. So just keep an eye on him as the week moves along, if he's available there or not. But he could definitely take away some snaps from guys like Darius Shepard. Obviously, the guys that were playing off the bench behind the big three wide receivers that they have, he's probably going to eat all their snaps. So we'll just have to see how that all shakes out this week, if he's even active. I do assume that he's going to be active, though, at the very least. Battlehawks defense, they're a good defense going against Houston. It's a little bit tougher matchup, but Houston struggled a little bit last week. If you really want to play Battlehawks in GPP, you could probably do it as well. Then we get down to the Vipers. So Jalen McClendon expected to be the starter this week per Coach Rod Woodson. Like I said, I don't understand this. Brett Hundley is the better quarterback. McClendon wasn't even that great in college. I have to think it has something to do with Brett Hundley's mobility, because McClendon is a mobile quarterback too. So maybe that plays a factor to it, especially if they know like these wide receivers are not going to play this week. Maybe they rely on a little bit more run heavy attack, a little RPO, read options, stuff like that. We'll just have to see how it all looks this week. So McClendon, like if you really want to take a dart throw as a pay down there, you could do it. But I think there's enough people probably doing it this week that you're not really gaining that much leverage off it. If you really want to make a leverage stance, you'd probably play Brett Hundley this week, honestly, because the odds that McClendon get benched are probably pretty good at this point in time. At running back, really just looking at John Levitt at $4,900. Really not a bad price tag there either. Should be pretty involved out of the passing game once again. Already mentioned DeAndre Torrey being placed on the reserve list. Geronimo Allison questionable due to his back. He's been limited all week. Mentioned that a little bit as well. Martavius Bryant did not play at practice on Thursday, not Friday. due to illness, so he's questionable. Sneak Sweeney questionable due to ankle. He's been limited all week as well. So we'll see who's available for this wide receiver unit. If like all these guys are out, Jeff Badette is going to be very interesting. Probably going to be super popular at that point in time. So just keep that in mind as well. Vipers defense, you could probably play in cash against San Antonio just because San Antonio is not that great. Vipers defense hasn't been that great, but there's still got decent enough players there that they should be able to get some pressure on the San Antonio quarterbacks as well. But with that being said, that's kind of the rundown on the sheet. We'll try to go over DraftKings, talk through a little bit of stuff as well. Kind of my general theory for this week. So let me bring that up real quick. So I'm going to just give me a minute here while I'm bringing this all up. And we're going to share DraftKings real quick. So share DraftKings. So we'll just click on the $5 or $3 one, play action. 5K to first place. Doesn't really matter the contest from this perspective. I'm going to get rid of this banner just because it's been up for quite a while at this point in time. But in terms of quarterbacks this week, probably focusing the most on the top 3 guys, in my opinion: Ben DiNucci, AJ McCarron, and Jordan Ta'amu. I'll probably, if I'm playing 20 lineups, I might get 1 or 2 with Brett Hundley, probably get like 1 or 2 with Brandon Silvers, probably get 1 or 2 with Cole McDonald, get some exposure there. Quentin Dormady will have a couple lineups too as well. Typically, I'm 20 maxing. Some weeks I'll just play 8 lineups as well. So just kind of a different theory as well. So mainly getting Jordan Ta'amu, probably the highest at this point in time. AJ McCarron, Ben DiNucci, there'll be some there, especially building stacks off of them. Houston guys just building some stacks off of them. Maybe it's just the pass catching options that pay off and they split quarterbacks once again, but we'll just have to see. Like, there's so many variables this week, especially at the quarterback position. So I think be slightly overweight to the field on Jordan Ta'amu, probably in line, the slightly overweight on McCarron, in line with DiNucci. A little bit overweight to Brett Hundley, probably a little bit overweight to the Houston quarterbacks, probably in line with Quentin Dormady on the field. Abram Smith, I'll probably just be in line with the field, honestly, at this point in time. I don't think there's too big a stance to make one direction or another, but definitely a good play. I'll probably be overweight to the field on Brian Hill and Max Borghi, though. Davion Smith will be underweight this week for sure. Morgan Ellison really just depends on if he plays. Darius Bradwell's really depends on if Ellison plays. Rod Smith, I really don't want a part of this week once again. Jermaine Martin's like the weird one. I'm probably not going to get to him, honestly. Patrick going to be like in line with the field, maybe slightly overweight. John Lovett, I'll be overweight to the field on. Darrington, probably a little bit underweight just because he had the 2 touchdowns last week. So I think people will be chasing him a little bit more. And then we just get down to kind of this bottom. I'll be overweight to Letty Brown. And then maybe I'll throw in like 1 share of Kevin Marks just in case it happens to be this week that he kind of jumps on the scene. Moving over to the wide receivers, Ja'Cory Pearson probably be in line with the field. It's a little bit tougher matchup against some of these Arlington corners as well. So we'll see how that all plays out. Maybe in line or slightly underweight to the field. Hakeem Butler, I feel like I'll probably end up being overweight to the field just because I feel like people are going to be a little bit down on him this week. Jeff Badette, I'll probably still be overweight to the field on, as I am most weeks, but quarterback situation is not the most friendly this week. Josh Gordon, definitely underweight to the field at this point in time. I'm probably just getting 1 share, if that. Deontay Burnett, probably be a little bit overweight to the field. I like stacking him. I'll probably stack him with Cole McDonald. I'll probably stack him with Brandon Silvers too, like if I'm being completely honest. Blake Jackson, probably in line or slightly overweight to the field. Landon Akers, definitely underweight to the field. Darius Shepard, I'll be underweight to the field once again. Charleston Rambo will be underweight to the field again. Lattimore, I'll be in line or overweight to the field for sure. Martavis Bryant and Geronimo Allison, honestly, it just depends if these guys play or not, but I don't expect to have too much of them, especially with McClendon at quarterback. Sal Cannell probably be underweight to the field once again. There is some leverage to be had with him, I think, too, especially if this is kind of the week that he gets in the end zone, but really hasn't been too involved in that regard, though. Austin Proel, probably in line with the field, just a couple shares here and there. Josh Hammond, no interest in really personally. Travell Harris, I'll be overweight to the field, which is kind of saying something since he is probably going to be pretty chalky, him and Cedric Bird, but I'll probably be a little bit overweight to the field on both. Lucky Jackson in line or slightly overweight to the field. Tolliver, don't need to talk too much about. Sweeting, if he plays, he's a little bit interesting in this price range. But with an ankle injury, it's hard to know how good he'll be. Justin Smith, I'll be in line or slightly underweight to the field on. Chris Blair, probably in line with the field. VC is probably a guy I'll be overweight to. Jawan Green's a guy I'll be overweight to. Just pointing out the relevant ones now at this point. Damian Willis probably be a little bit underweight too. Eli Rogers probably a little bit underweight too. Winningham, you could probably take some shots here. He played a little bit more last week if you really, really want to do so. Vasher will be a little bit overweight too. Matthew Sexton, if we get news that some of these guys are out, I'll probably be pretty overweight to him because he can operate in a lot of different roles. Fred Brown, I'll be underweight to the field on because I think Tovine's going to be back and take away some of his snaps, if I'm being completely honest. Victor Bolden, probably underweight to the field just because I think a lot of people that played USFL are going to play him. Renell Hall, I'll be a little bit overweight to the field on, I think personally. Jacory Roberson, I want to get like a share or two just in case this happens to be the week. Tovine, I might get one share of just with him coming back as long as he's playing. Dan Williams, I'll probably be overweight to the field on. I like that role in the Orlando offense. And then that's pretty much it from the wide receiver position. Moving over to the defenses, the main ones I will be playing this week are going to be the defenders. Let's see. So the defenders, the Brahmas, and the Sea Dragons are the three defenses I'm primarily playing this week. If you want to get some exposure to the Vipers, I definitely understand that. If you want to get some exposure to like the Battlehawks or the Renegades, you could definitely do that as well. But primarily playing my three cash defenses this week with the defenders, the Brahmas, and the Sea Dragons. Might get a little bit of exposure to the Vipers as well. But that's just kind of a general overview for this slate for week number 7. Hopefully you find this video helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Message me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and I'd be more than happy to help you guys as we build out lineups. Just keep in mind that the main slate does start tonight. There's a Friday game tonight, so obviously that is something that's a little bit different this week. But definitely do appreciate everybody that did take the time out of their day to tune in. Before I get out of here, just have to do, my normal stuff where, if you're brand new to my channel, haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we got the XFL DFS. We got MLB DFS that just started up yesterday. We got like a week more of NBA DFS. Not doing an NBA DFS video today, but we'll have some next week as well. USFL DFS will be starting up shortly as well. So a lot of DFS out there. If you guys are interested in some price picks stuff, you guys any questions about price picks, feel free to message me down in the comments on Twitter as well. At Coach Craig Sport can help you with that as well. I try to put some price picks up here and there, just not hasn't been as much as of late. But once MLB gets rolling, we'll be doing a lot of price picks for that as well. Might have some up for USFL, might have some up for XFL as well. So definitely be sure to check that out. But with that being said, just make sure you have that notification bell turned on so you never miss a beat when I upload any of this content. If you guys are interested in NFL draft prospect interviews as well, be sure to check out the ones on the channel that I've done recently. Quite a few interesting guys that I have had the opportunity to talk to in this draft cycle as well. But with that being said, definitely do appreciate everybody that did take the time out of their day to tune in. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope that each and every one of you has a great rest